somewhere between 30 to 60 documents an hour, right? So if you're starting with about 1.5 million documents, and by the way, document is about 5 pages, right? So you're starting with a small, relatively small matter, 7.5 million pages. Look at the number at the bottom. Depending on the system, you're paying between $5 to $10 million to the attorneys. This is what is being spent on the back end of what you do. This is why records management and being smart about it is so critical. It's not the money you spend in buying the storage platforms or the systems or the payroll of the team. It's about how much money you spend with the lawyers. And that's what's driving this confluence between records management and electronic discovery. So Dave, I know you've been in the middle of all of this stuff for a long time now. Any thoughts on this kind of cost structures?
Yes, and before I respond specifically to that question, I do want to thank you, I want to thank Bob, I want to thank Arma and all the members that are here for the opportunity to speak with you. I mean, without a doubt, we are seeing costs associated with e-discovery skyrocketing. And there are really 2 principal reasons. Number one, it's people, human beings, businesses rely on electronic business processes which result in massive volumes of information being generated. It's cheap to store it because storage technologies continue to decrease in cost. And human beings have a general tendency to just keep information for the sake of feeling comforted that there's the ability, if need be, to go back to various points in time to resurrect information. So you've all heard the stories about the IT directors that keep the tapes in their trunk, and these kinds of things actually happen. So without a doubt, when companies like mine are hired to go find as much electronic information as we can, we find lots. And depending upon whether it's a litigation or an investigation, the volumes are going through the roof. New technologies like collaborative tools like SharePoint make it very, very easy to store information. They're all subject to discovery. So bottom line is pretty much everywhere you look, absent a real strong records retention practice, you're going to find high volumes of information being stored. And at the end of the day, the lawyers do need to have eyes on documents before they're produced. That's why these costs continue to go up.
Yeah. So all of you in the records management arena, this is a growth business, current conditions notwithstanding. You are really at that nexus. To add more complications to this, I already talked about the courts, taking a dim view of you're not playing ball well. There's something called the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Right. This is the protocol that drives all of the civil litigation in this country. The rules changed quite extensively in December 2006, and I'm not going to bore you with the details, but what's critical here is, unlike the previous version of the rules that mostly dealt with paper, for the first time, the rules said you have to worry about electronically stored information, ESI. And you have to worry about it at a point earlier than you ever needed to before. You needed to have a better handle on it, a better idea of where it is, how much of it there is, and you need to share all this with opposing counsel. Right? So the ball game really changed quite dramatically. Until that time, it was sort of loosey-goosey. Right? So in December 2006, all of a sudden, digital data became very key from a litigation perspective. Right? That's the really main takeaway. There's a lot more in there. Probably the one thing to point out is Rule 37, which says as long as you have a good practice for destroying data on an ongoing basis, right? It's a steady process that you have, and it's not because of a litigation event. As long as you have a routine process, if along the way you manage to destroy something that you shouldn't have, it's probably okay. It's called a safe harbor. You have an out. But it better be something that is routine. That's where distraction becomes key. You need to know when to destroy the documents. So because of all of the things that we talked about, really a bunch of worlds are coming together, the old and the new. Everything is being driven by litigation, right? And when there is so much data and when there is such costs and risks involved, the only way to do this is by being smart about it. As Bob said, it's the T in IT that comes into play here. You need to be smart. You need to be able to use technology to help you adopt and know what you have strategy. The more you know about what you have and how important it is, the better prepared you can be. And that's the theme today, being proactive about knowing what you have, where it is, and how soon you can destroy it. And if you can't destroy it, how do you go through it to do your job cost effectively? Okay? So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dave for a bit to talk about Pricewaterhouse perspective on this, which I think you'll all find very instructive.
I'm going to stand up, and I also wanted to respond to one of the other comments you made earlier regarding the taxi cab driver, regarding him calling you kid. I get that every day.
Well, I feel so old.
So, PricewaterhouseCoopers has been in the e-discovery investigative space for greater than 10 years, and I really began to get significant exposure in the early 2000s, particularly when working on the WorldCom investigation, which you may recall was one of the critical matters followed right after Enron. At the time, it was the largest bankruptcy really in the history of humanity. And I bring it up because so much has changed from then to now. For example, and during the WorldCom investigation, our teams went in and captured forensic images of servers, PCs, other devices, et cetera, right after the FBI swept through. And what's interesting is that we focused on about 80 custodians, 80 important employees. And at the time, during that collection, believe it or not, what we captured was a little more than a terabyte of information, 1 terabyte. Very big case, very big bankruptcy, a terabyte was captured. Fast forward to today, got a case with a very wealthy private investment fund where one individual alone had greater than a terabyte of information because this individual had multiple PCs, very cheap external terabyte, half terabyte storage device.
So Dave, just for putting it in context, a terabyte is about approximately 100 million pages. 100 million pages.
So this comment about volume, I mean, this is not news to everyone in the room who's struggling with dealing with information management literally every single day. But it's getting to be even more pronounced. And I fast forward to another example right now in the real world, working with 2 very large financial services firms, where we're helping them manage down greater than, well, multiple petabytes of information. And for a point of reference, a petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. So the trend that's out there is staggering amounts of information. The other really important trend that I think you're all aware of is the use of archival technologies. Archival technologies are backed up themselves, and so what you see is this massive cumulative effect where information increasingly is stored in cheaper storage devices, but in far greater volumes. PricewaterhouseCoopers is a very large firm. We've got about 155,000 people spread in about 150 countries around the world. We work on matters that involve global issues very often. We've got forensic capabilities scattered around roughly 39 countries across the United States. The reason I make this point is that even though we're all sitting here in the United States worrying about domestic discovery rules and regulations, I do want to just talk about a case that we're working on right now. We've got a company headquartered in London. They've got operations around the world. a suit is filed in the Southern District